The early morning sun cast long shadows across the city as Maya stepped off the bus at downtown's busiest stop. She clutched her small purse tightly and looked up at the towering glass building in front of her. Sterling Industries headquarters stretched 30 floors into the sky, its reflective windows gleaming like mirrors in the sunlight. Maya had never seen anything quite like it back home in Kansas. The tallest building in her small farming town was only 3 stories high, and that was the old grain elevator. She smoothed down her navy blue dress, the same one she'd worn to her high school graduation 5 years ago. It was clean and pressed, but she knew it wasn't the designer outfit most people probably wore to interviews at places like this. Walking through the revolving glass doors felt like entering another world. The lobby was enormous, with marble floors so polished she could see her reflection. A waterfall cascaded down one wall and expensive-looking artwork hung everywhere. People in sharp business suits hurried past, talking on phones or typing on laptops. Their shoes clicked against the marble in a rhythm that reminded Maya of horses trotting on pavement. She approached the reception desk, where a woman with perfectly styled hair and bright red lipstick looked up from her computer screen. The receptionist's eyes quickly scanned Maya from head to toe, taking in her simple dress and worn black flats. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice polite but distant. "I'm here for an interview with Mr. Sterling," Maya replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm Maya Johnson." The receptionist's eyebrows raised slightly as she checked her computer. "Oh yes, for the executive assistant position. Please take a seat over there. Someone will be with you shortly." Maya walked to the waiting area, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. The chairs were made of soft leather and were more comfortable than anything in her family's farmhouse. She sat down and tried to calm her nerves by looking around at the other people waiting. Most were dressed in expensive suits and carried briefcases that probably cost more than Maya's family made in a month from selling corn. A few other candidates sat nearby, and Maya couldn't help but overhear their conversations. One man was talking loudly about his MBA from an Ivy League school. A woman next to him mentioned her previous job at a Fortune 500 company. Maya felt her confidence waver for a moment. Her own resume was much simpler. She had a business degree from the local state university and had spent the last 2 years helping run her family's farm and the small agricultural supply store they owned. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, a woman in a crisp white blouse appeared. "Maya Johnson?" she called out. Maya stood up, her heart beating faster. "That's me. I'm Lisa, Mr. Sterling's assistant. He's ready to see you now. Follow me, please." They walked across the lobby to a bank of elevators with golden doors. Lisa pressed a button, and Maya watched the numbers climb. 10, 15, 20, 25. She'd never been this high up in a building before. When the doors opened on the 28th floor, Maya stepped out into another world of luxury. The hallway was lined with expensive paintings and sculptures. Through the windows, she could see the entire city spread out below like a miniature model. Lisa led her down the hall to a set of double doors made of dark wood. "Mr. Sterling will see you now," Lisa said, opening the doors. Maya walked into the biggest office she'd ever seen. It was larger than her family's entire living room and kitchen combined. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city. A massive desk made of polished wood sat in the center of the room, and behind it stood a man in an expensive suit. Richard Sterling was probably in his 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He was tall and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. His suit probably cost more than Maya's family car, and his gold watch caught the light as he gestured for her to sit down. "So, you're the farm girl," he said before Maya had even reached the chair. It wasn't a question, and his tone made it clear he wasn't impressed. Maya sat down in the leather chair across from his desk, keeping her back straight and her hands folded in her lap. "Yes, sir, I grew up on a farm in Kansas." Sterling leaned back in his chair, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "I have to ask, do you actually know how to use a computer, or are you more familiar with pitchforks and shovels?" The question stung, but Maya kept her voice level. "I'm quite comfortable with technology, Mr. Sterling. I helped modernize our farm's operations and manage our inventory systems. Inventory systems, Sterling repeated, his voice dripping with condescension. You mean counting bags of seed and keeping track of chickens? Maya felt her jaw tighten, but she forced herself to stay calm. Actually, we use sophisticated software to track crop yields, weather patterns, market prices, and supply chain logistics. Modern farming requires quite a bit of technology. Sterling waved his hand dismissively. I'm sure it does. Tell me, have you ever worked in a real office before? With real deadlines and real pressure? The word real hit Maya like a slap. She thought about the countless nights she'd stayed up until dawn during harvest season, the stress of watching weather reports during planting time, the pressure of making decisions that could mean the difference between profit and loss for her family's livelihood. I've worked under pressure, yes, she said simply. I'm sure you have, Sterling said, standing up and walking around his desk. But let me explain something to you, young lady. This isn't about feeding pigs or milking cows. This is about high-stakes business deals worth millions of dollars. This is about managing schedules for people who run companies, not chicken coops. Maya watched him pace behind his desk, his expensive shoes clicking on the polished floor. She noticed how he seemed to enjoy talking down to her, how his eyes lit up when he thought he'd made a particularly cutting remark. I understand the difference, Mr. Sterling, Maya said quietly. Do you? Sterling asked, stopping to look at her directly. Because frankly, I'm not sure why you're even here. This position requires someone who can handle sophisticated clients, complex scheduling, and high-level communication, someone who understands the business world. Maya met his gaze steadily. I believe I can handle those responsibilities. Sterling laughed, but there was no humor in it. Really? Someone who probably had to look up directions to find this building thinks she can handle the demands of being my assistant? Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. I'm here because I believe I'm qualified for the position, Mr. Sterling. My background may be different from other candidates, but that doesn't mean I'm less capable. Different, Sterling repeated, settling back into his chair. That's one way to put it. Tell me, what would you do if I needed you to arrange a business dinner with potential investors? Would you suggest we meet at the local diner? Maya bit back her first response and instead said, I would ask about your preferences and budget, research appropriate restaurants, make reservations, and ensure all the details were handled properly. And how exactly would you know what constitutes an appropriate restaurant for serious business? Sterling asked. I'm guessing the fanciest place in your hometown is probably a steakhouse next to the highway. Maya realized that nothing she said would change his mind. He had decided who she was the moment he saw her resume, and no amount of professional answers would convince him otherwise. She sat quietly for a moment, watching him lean back in his chair with satisfaction, clearly enjoying what he saw as his superior position. Mr. Sterling, Maya said finally, I think there might be more to this conversation than a simple job interview. Sterling's eyes gleamed with a cruel satisfaction as he leaned forward in his chair. Maya's calm response seemed to irritate him rather than impress him. He clearly expected her to be flustered or intimidated by now, but her composure only seemed to fuel his need to break her down. You know what? Sterling said, reaching for his phone. I think my colleagues would find this interesting. They're always curious about the kinds of people who apply for positions here. Maya felt a chill run down her spine as Sterling pressed a button on his desk phone. Janet, could you ask Mr. Peterson and Mr. Williams to step into my office for a moment? Tell them I have something entertaining to show them. Within minutes, two men in expensive suits walked into the office. The first was a heavy-set man with a perfectly trimmed beard who looked to be in his 40s. The second was younger, maybe early 30s, with slicked-back hair and a watch that probably cost more than most people's cars. Gentlemen, Sterling announced with theatrical flair, I'd like you to meet Maya here. She's interviewing for my assistant position and she brings some very unique qualifications to the table. The two men looked at Maya with curious expressions, clearly not understanding what Sterling found so amusing. Maya remained seated, her hands folded in her lap, but she could feel her heart beating faster. Maya here is a farmer, Sterling continued. his voice dripping with false enthusiasm. She grew up milking cows and slopping pigs in Kansas. Isn't that fascinating? The bearded man, Peterson, shifted uncomfortably. Richard, I'm not sure what you're getting at here. Oh, come on, David, Sterling said, standing up and walking around his desk again. Don't you find it refreshing to meet someone so authentic? Maya, why don't you tell my friends here about your morning routine back home? Do you still wake up at dawn to feed the chickens? Maya looked directly at Sterling, her voice steady despite the humiliation she felt building inside her chest. I wake up early, yes. Running any successful operation requires dedication and hard work. Sterling clapped his hands together as if delighted. See? Even her answer sounds like something from a farming manual. Maya, I'm curious. Have you ever seen an elevator before today? Or was this your first time experiencing indoor plumbing? The younger man, Williams, looked genuinely uncomfortable now. Richard, maybe we should let the interview continue normally. Nonsense, Sterling waved him off. This is educational. Maya, show us how you milk a cow. I'm sure my friends would love to see a demonstration. Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she kept her voice level. Mr. Sterling, I don't think that's relevant to the position we're discussing. Everything about you is relevant, Sterling shot back. You walk in here with your little farm girl dress and your homespun wisdom, thinking you can work in the big city. It's almost charming, really. Peterson cleared his throat. Richard, perhaps. David, please. Sterling interrupted. Let me finish. Maya, I have an idea. Instead of wasting everyone's time with this charade, why don't I offer you a position that would actually suit your skill set? Maya waited, knowing that whatever came next would be designed to humiliate her further. We have an opening in our janitorial department, Sterling announced with fake sincerity. You'd be responsible for cleaning floors, emptying trash bins, that sort of thing. Much more appropriate for someone with your background. You're probably much more comfortable with manual labor anyway. The office fell silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning. Williams was staring at his shoes, clearly embarrassed to be witnessing this display. Peterson had his arms crossed and was frowning at Sterling. Maya sat perfectly still, for a long moment her mind racing. She could feel the weight of their stares, could sense Sterling's expectation that she would either break down crying or storm out in anger. Instead, she took a slow, deep breath. That's very generous of you, Mr. Sterling, she said quietly, but I don't think that position would be the best use of my abilities. Sterling's smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. Your abilities? And what abilities would those be exactly? Can you organize a boardroom meeting? Can you handle confidential business information? Can you speak intelligently with investors and clients? I believe I can, yes, Maya replied. Believe? Sterling laughed, looking at his colleagues as if expecting them to join in. Maya, believing and doing are two very different things. You might believe you can fly, but that doesn't mean you should jump off a building. Williams shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Richard, I think we should probably— No, let me finish, Sterling said, his voice rising slightly. This is important. Maya here represents something we see too often in business. People who think they can skip steps, who think that just wanting something badly enough makes them qualified for it. He walked closer to where Maya was sitting, towering over her chair. You see, Maya, there's a natural order to things. Some people are born to lead and others are born to follow. Some people are meant for boardrooms and others are meant for barnyards. It's not personal. It's just the way the world works. Maya looked up at him, her expression unchanged. I see. Do you? Sterling asked, his voice taking on a patronizing tone usually reserved for small children. Because I'm not sure you do. Let me be clearer. You don't belong here. This isn't your world. These aren't your people. You'd be much happier back home, maybe finding a nice farmer boy to marry, having some kids, living a simple life. Peterson finally spoke up. Richard, that's enough. It's not enough, Sterling snapped back. Someone needs to tell her the truth, before she embarrasses herself further. Maya, look around this office. Look at this building. This represents decades of business experience, generations of success, millions of dollars in deals. Do you really think someone who spent her life shoveling manure can just walk in here and be part of it? Maya remained silent, but something in her eyes shifted. The hurt was still there, but it was joined by something else, something cooler and more calculating. Sterling mistook her silence for defeat. I'm actually doing you a favor here. I'm saving you from the humiliation you'd face trying to work at this level. Be grateful that I'm being honest with you instead of just sending you away with false hope. Honest, Maya repeated quietly. That's right, Sterling said, crossing his arms. Brutally honest. It's a quality that's made me very successful in business. I don't coddle people or tell them what they want to hear. I tell them what they need to know. Maya stood up slowly, smoothing down her dress. For a moment, Sterling looked satisfied, thinking he had finally broken her spirit and she was about to leave in shame. Instead, Maya reached into her simple handbag and pulled out her phone. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice calm, but somehow different than it had been moments before. I think it's time for me to make a phone call. Sterling frowned, confused by this unexpected development. A phone call? To who? Your daddy to come pick you up? Maya didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a number on her phone and lifted it to her ear. Peterson and Williams watched with growing curiosity as the atmosphere in the room began to shift in a way none of them could quite understand. The phone rang twice before someone answered. Maya's entire demeanor shifted as she spoke, her voice taking on a tone of authority that hadn't been there moments before. Hello, James? Yes, it's me, Maya said, turning slightly away from Sterling's confused stare. I need to discuss the Sterling Industries situation with you immediately. Sterling's eyebrows shot up. What did you just say? Maya held up one finger, asking for silence while she continued her conversation. The preliminary research was accurate, but I'm getting first-hand confirmation of some serious cultural issues within their leadership structure. Peterson and Williams exchanged glances, both looking puzzled. Sterling's face was a mixture of confusion and growing anger at being ignored in his own office. Excuse me, Sterling said loudly. But who exactly do you think you're calling in my office? Maya continued speaking into the phone as if Sterling hadn't said anything. No, James, I'm experiencing it right now. The behavior patterns we discussed are even worse than the report suggested. I'm witnessing textbook hostile workplace conduct. Sterling stepped closer to Maya, his face reddening. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but Maya finally looked at him while still holding the phone to her ear. James, hold on one moment, please. She lowered the phone and addressed Sterling directly. Mr. Sterling, I'm having an important business conversation. I'd appreciate it if you could wait. Wait? Sterling's voice cracked with disbelief. This is my office. You don't tell me to wait. Maya raised the phone back to her ear. James, I'm sorry about the interruption. Yes, I think we need to accelerate our timeline. The due diligence report mentioned potential liability issues, and I'm seeing them firsthand. Williams whispered to Peterson. What is she talking about? Peterson shrugged, but both men were clearly intrigued by this sudden change in Maya's behavior. Sterling was practically vibrating with rage. Who is James? What timeline? What are you talking about? Maya held up her finger again, asking for silence. The acquisition should proceed as planned, but we'll need to factor in some additional cost for management restructuring. Yes, complete restructuring. Acquisition? Sterling's voice rose to almost a shout. What acquisition? Maya continued her conversation, now pacing slowly across Sterling's expensive carpet. The cultural assessment was actually conservative. We're looking at a complete overhaul of the executive team. No, not possible to salvage the current leadership structure. Peterson found his voice. Maya, what company are you talking about? Maya smiled at Peterson, the first genuine smile she'd shown since entering the office. James, I'll call you back in 10 minutes with my final recommendation. Yes, I'm certain. Proceed with phase 2. She ended the call and slipped her phone back into her purse. Sterling was staring at her as if she'd grown a second head. What the hell was that about? That was my investment advisor. Maya said simply, smoothing down her dress. We've been discussing your company. My company? Sterling's laugh was sharp and disbelieving. You're completely delusional. You walk in here for a job interview and think you can make jokes about buying my company? Maya looked around the office, taking in the expensive furniture and artwork with new eyes. It's a beautiful office, Mr. Sterling, though I think the decor might be a bit too flashy for my taste. Williams stepped forward. Maya, I'm sorry, but I'm completely lost. What's going on here? What's going on, Sterling said with a harsh laugh, is that our little farm girl here has completely lost touch with reality. She thinks she can walk into my office and pretend to be some kind of business mogul. Maya nodded thoughtfully. I can understand why you'd think that, Mr. Sterling. After all, you've spent the last 30 minutes explaining to me how appearances can be deceiving, haven't you? Appearances? Sterling's confusion was evident. You assumed that because I grew up on a farm and dressed simply, I must be poor and uneducated, Maya said calmly. You decided who I was based entirely on how I look and where I come from. Peterson was watching Maya with growing interest. And those assumptions were wrong? Very wrong, Maya replied. But Mr. Sterling here was so committed to his first impression that he never bothered to ask the right questions. Sterling waved his hand dismissively. This is ridiculous. You're a farm girl from Kansas who can barely afford a decent interview. Outfit. Don't try to turn this into some kind of lesson about judging people. Maya reached into her purse again and pulled out a business card. She handed it to Peterson, who read it with widening eyes. Maya Johnson, CEO of Heartland Agricultural Enterprises, Peterson read aloud. His voice trailed off as he continued reading. Chairman of the Board, Johnson Investment Group. Williams moved to look over Peterson's shoulder. Johnson Investment Group? Isn't that the firm that's been buying up agricultural and tech companies across the Midwest? Maya nodded. Among other things, yes. Sterling grabbed the business card from Peterson's hands. This is fake. Anyone can have business cards printed. You're right, Maya agreed. Anyone can. James, my advisor, suggested I might want to bring some documentation, but I told him it wouldn't be necessary for a simple job interview. Job interview, Sterling repeated, his voice getting higher. You're here for a job interview. Actually, Maya said, settling back into her chair as if she owned the office. I'm here for research purposes. My investment team has been analyzing Sterling Industries for the past 6 months as a potential acquisition target. The room fell completely silent except for the distant sounds of city traffic filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Williams found his voice first. Acquisition target? We've been quietly purchasing shares through various shell companies, Maya explained conversationally. Your stock has been undervalued for months, which made it an attractive investment opportunity. Sterling's face had gone pale. That's impossible. I would know if someone was trying to buy out my company. Would you? Maya asked. When was the last time you actually looked at your shareholder reports? When did you last review who's been buying and selling your stock? Peterson and Williams were both staring at Sterling now, clearly wondering the same thing. The thing is, Maya continued, buying a company is more than just acquiring shares. You have to understand what you're really purchasing. That includes the management structure, the company culture, the potential legal liabilities. Legal liabilities? Williams echoed. Maya looked directly at Sterling. Hostile workplace environments can be very expensive. Discrimination lawsuits, harassment claims, wrongful termination suits, they can cost millions and destroy a company's reputation. Sterling's hands were shaking slightly as he set the business card down on his desk. This is all some kind of elaborate joke. You're just a farm girl trying to get revenge for a bad interview. Mr. Sterling, Maya said gently, I think you're still missing the point. I'm not just a farm girl. I haven't been just a farm girl for quite some time. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. My father started with a small farm in Kansas, just like you assumed. But he was also one of the smartest businessmen who ever lived. He took that small farm and built it into an agricultural empire worth billions. Peterson's voice was barely a whisper. Billions? When he died 2 years ago, I inherited everything. Maya continued, still looking out the window. Farms, processing plants, distribution networks, technology companies, investment portfolios, the works. She turned back to face the three men, all of whom were now staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief. So when I say I've been researching Sterling Industries, Maya said with a small smile, I mean my team of analysts, lawyers, and financial advisors have been preparing a complete takeover bid. Sterling slumped into his chair, the color completely drained from his face. This isn't possible. Maya walked back to Sterling's desk and picked up the business card he had dropped. She studied it for a moment before looking back at the three men who were staring at her in stunned silence. You know, Mr. Sterling, you asked me earlier if I understood the business world, Maya said, her voice calm but carrying a new weight of authority. Let me tell you what I understand. She moved to the chair she had been sitting in during the humiliating interview, but this time, she didn't sit down. Instead, she rested her hand on the back of it, looking completely at ease in the luxurious office. I understand that my father, Robert Johnson, started with 40 acres of farmland that his grandfather left him. Everyone in our town thought he was crazy when he mortgaged everything to buy more land during the farm crisis in the 80s. Peterson was listening intently now, his earlier discomfort with Sterling's behavior replaced by fascination with Maya's story. But my father saw something others didn't, Maya continued. He saw that farming was going to change. Technology, automation, data analysis. He knew that the future belonged to people who could adapt. Sterling tried to interrupt. This is all very touching, but please let me finish, Mr. Sterling, Maya said firmly. You've had your turn to talk. The authority in her voice was unmistakable now. Even Sterling fell silent, though his jaw was clenched tight. Within 10 years, my father had built the largest agricultural operation in 3 counties, Maya said. But he didn't stop there. He started buying up processing facilities, grain elevators, transportation companies, anything connected to agriculture. Williams shook his head in amazement. Johnson Agricultural, I've heard of it. They supply grain to half the food companies in the country. That's just the beginning, Maya replied. In the 90s, my father saw another opportunity. All these tech companies were developing software for businesses, but nobody was focusing on agriculture. So he started his own tech division. She began pacing slowly around Sterling's office as she spoke, and somehow her simple dress and worn shoes no longer looked out of place. Her confidence filled the room. We developed software for crop management, weather prediction, supply chain, optimization. Then we started licensing that technology to other companies. Then we started buying those companies. Peterson was doing mental calculations. The Johnson Investment Group isn't just agricultural anymore. Not for the last 15 years, Maya confirmed. We have interests in technology, manufacturing, logistics, real estate. My father always said that smart business is about seeing connections that others miss. Sterling finally found his voice again, though it sounded strained. Even if this is all true, what does it have to do with my company? Maya turned to look at him directly. Everything, Mr. Sterling. You see, Sterling Industries has been on our radar for quite some time. She walked over to one of Sterling's expensive paintings and examined it closely. You have excellent manufacturing facilities, a solid customer base, and patents on some very interesting technologies. On paper, you look like a perfect acquisition target. On paper? Williams asked. The problem is management, Maya said simply. Our research team always does extensive background checks on leadership before we make major investments. We look into company culture, employee satisfaction, legal history, personal conduct of executives. Sterling's face was getting red again, but this time it looked more like fear than anger. The reports we got about Sterling Industries were concerning, Maya continued. Stories about hostile work environments, discrimination complaints that were settled quietly, high executive turnover rates. Peterson was looking uncomfortable again, but for different reasons now. Maya, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, Mr. Peterson, Maya said. This concerns everyone in this room. You see, when we're considering acquiring a company, We don't just look at the numbers, we look at the people. She turned back to Sterling, who was gripping the arms of his chair. My father taught me that the character of leadership determines the long-term success or failure of any business. He used to say that you can fix almost any problem in a company except bad character at the top. What are you saying? Sterling's voice was barely above a whisper. I'm saying that I didn't come here today looking for a job, Mr. Sterling. I came here to see for myself what kind of man you really are. The silence in the room was deafening. Maya let it stretch for a long moment before continuing. You see, I could have sent investigators. I could have hired consultants to assess your leadership style, but I wanted to experience it firsthand. Williams was staring at Maya with growing understanding. You came here deliberately. I dressed down, simplified my resume, presented myself as exactly the kind of person Mr. Sterling would feel comfortable looking down on, Maya explained. I wanted to see how he treats people he perceives as beneath him. Sterling's breathing was becoming labored. This was all a setup. It was a test, Maya corrected. And you failed it spectacularly. She walked back to the window and looked out at the city again. Do you know what I learned about you in the last hour, Mr. Sterling? I learned that you're cruel to people you think can't fight back. I learned that you enjoy humiliating others. I learned that you judge people based on superficial characteristics rather than their actual abilities. Peterson cleared his throat. Maya, what exactly does this mean for Sterling Industries? Maya reached into her purse again and pulled out her phone. It means that the acquisition is moving forward, but with some significant changes to the original plan. She pressed a number and put the phone to her ear. James? Yes, it's me again. I've completed my assessment. Sterling tried to stand up, but his legs seemed unsteady. You can't do this. Maya held up her hand for silence again. James, I need you to contact legal immediately. We're moving to the next phase. Yes, I'm certain. The current management structure is completely incompatible with our values. She paused, listening to the person on the other end of the line. Also, I want you to reach out to Lisa Chen in HR. She's Mr. Sterling's assistant, and from what I observed, she seems to have strong ethical standards. We'll want to speak with her about a potential promotion. Sterling's face went completely white. Lisa? What does Lisa have to do with anything? Maya covered the phone with her hand. She looked very uncomfortable during your performance earlier, Mr. Sterling. Unlike your colleagues here, she seemed genuinely disturbed by how you were treating me. Peterson and Williams both looked ashamed, realizing that they had been called out for their own passive participation in the humiliation. James, one more thing, Maya said into the phone. I want you to draft a comprehensive code of conduct for all employees. 0 tolerance for discrimination or harassment. Yes, I know. It will be expensive to implement, but it's necessary. She ended the call and looked around the office one final time. Mr. Sterling, in about 2 hours you're going to receive a call from your board of directors. They're going to inform you that Johnson Investment Group now owns controlling interest in Sterling Industries. Sterling slumped back into his chair, his expensive suit suddenly looking rumpled and ill-fitting. The official announcement will be made tomorrow morning, Maya continued. But I wanted you to hear it from me first, since we've gotten to know each other so well. Williams found his voice. What happens to the current management? Maya looked at him thoughtfully. That depends on whether they're part of the problem or part of the solution, Mr. Williams. Today's events will certainly factor into those decisions. Maya looked at her watch, a simple silver piece that she'd worn since college. It was nothing like the flashy gold timepiece on Sterling's wrist, but it had served her well through countless business meetings and farm work alike. Mr. Sterling, you have exactly 90 minutes before your world changes completely, she said, her voice matter of fact. I suggest you use that time wisely. Sterling was staring at her with a mixture of disbelief and growing panic. This can't be legal. You can't just walk into someone's company and take it over. Maya smiled, and for the first time since entering the office, it was genuinely amused. Actually, Mr. Sterling, it's completely legal. Every share we purchased was bought through proper channels at fair market prices. Your own board approved many of the sales. Peterson stepped forward, his face pale. Maya, when you say controlling interest, I mean that as of 1 hour ago, Johnson Investment Group owns 51% of Sterling Industries stock. Maya replied. We've been buying shares for the past 8 months through various investment funds and shell companies. Williams was shaking his head in amazement. 8 months? You've been planning this for 8 months? Actually, we've been considering it for longer than that, Maya said. But the decision to move forward was made 8 months ago. Today was simply the final evaluation. Sterling's phone began ringing on his desk. He looked at it like it was a snake about to bite him. Aren't you going to answer that? Maya asked pleasantly. It's probably important. With trembling hands, Sterling picked up the phone. Hello? Even from across the room, they could hear the agitated voice on the other end. Sterling's face went from pale to green as he listened. Yes, I understand, he said weakly. No, I wasn't aware. Yes, I'll be there. He hung up the phone and looked at Maya with defeated eyes. That was the chairman of my board. Emergency meeting in 1 hour. I know, Maya said. I called him 20 minutes ago. Peterson sat down heavily in one of Sterling's guest chairs. This is really happening. It is, Maya confirmed. But Mr. Peterson, this doesn't have to be bad news for everyone. Change can be positive if people are willing to embrace it. She walked over to Sterling's desk and picked up a framed photo of the building they were in. This is a beautiful company, Mr. Sterling. You have talented employees, innovative products, and tremendous potential. The only thing holding it back was toxic leadership. Sterling finally found some fight left in him. Toxic leadership? I built this company from nothing. No, Maya said firmly. You inherited this company from your father, just like I inherited mine. The difference is what we each did with our inheritance. She set the photo back down gently. Your father was actually a very respected businessman. I remember my own father speaking highly of him. They did business together several times over the years. Sterling's anger faltered for a moment. Your father knew my father? Robert Johnson and Theodore Sterling worked together on agricultural equipment manufacturing in the early 2000s, Maya explained. Your father was known for treating people fairly and building lasting business relationships based on mutual respect. The words hit Sterling like physical blows. His father's reputation had always been important to him, even if he'd never managed to live up to it. Which makes what you've become even more disappointing, Maya continued. You had every advantage. Money, education, a respected family name, a successful company handed to you. And you use those advantages to make other people feel small. Williams was listening intently. What happens now? Maya turned to address both Peterson and Williams directly. That depends on you. This company is going to undergo significant changes, but we believe in redemption and second chances for people who are willing to learn and grow. She paused, looking at both men seriously. However, what I witnessed today was unacceptable. You both stood by and watched while Mr. Sterling humiliated someone he thought was powerless. That makes you complicit. Peterson hung his head. You're right. I should have said something. Yes, you should have, Maya agreed. But the fact that you're acknowledging it now tells me there's hope for you. Williams nodded slowly. What do we need to do? First, you need to understand that this behavior ends today, Maya said. Zero tolerance means zero tolerance. No exceptions, no matter how senior someone is or how much money they bring in. She walked to the window again, looking out at the city below. Second, you need to help us identify other problematic behaviors in the company. This kind of culture doesn't exist in isolation. There are probably other employees who've been mistreated or discriminated against. Peterson looked up. There are. I've heard complaints over the years, but they were always dismissed or buried. Not anymore, Maya said firmly. We're going to create an environment where people feel safe reporting problems and confident that action will be taken. Sterling's phone rang again. This time he didn't even try to answer it. That's probably your lawyer, Maya said. I'd recommend taking the call. You're going to need all the help you can get. Sterling looked at her with desperate eyes. Maya, please. Can't we work something out? I made a mistake, but surely we can find a solution that works for everyone. Maya studied his face for a long moment. Mr. Sterling, do you know what the saddest part of this whole situation is? He shook his head. If you had treated me with basic human dignity today, if you had shown even a shred of respect for another person, we might have been able to work together, she said. I believe in giving people opportunities to prove themselves. But you didn't just fail a test, you revealed who you really are. She picked up her simple purse and slung it over her shoulder. The acquisition will be completed by end of business. Today, you'll receive your termination notice by 5 p.m., along with your severance package. Sterling's voice was barely a whisper. Severance? I'm not cruel like you are, Mr. Sterling, Maya said. Despite everything you've done, you'll receive a fair compensation package. It's more than you deserve, but it's the right thing to do. She turned to Peterson and Williams. Gentlemen, if you're interested in keeping your positions, I suggest you spend the next few days thinking very carefully about what kind of employees you want to be going forward. Peterson stood up. Maya, I want to apologize. Not just for today, but for all the times I've stayed silent when I should have spoken up. Apologies are a start, Maya replied. But I'll be judging you based on your actions going forward, not your words today. Williams also stood. What about the rest of the company? The employees who had nothing to do with this? They're exactly why I'm doing this, Maya said. Every person who works here deserves to come to work without fear of harassment or discrimination. They deserve leadership that respects their dignity and values their contributions. She walked toward the door, then paused and turned back one final time. Mr. Sterling, I hope you learned something from this experience. You had everything handed to you, and you wasted it by becoming someone your own father would be ashamed of. But it's not too late to become a better person, even if it's too late to save your career here. Sterling was slumped in his chair, staring at the surface of his expensive desk. One last thing, Maya added. Lisa, your assistant, will be receiving a promotion to interim CEO effective immediately. She showed more character in one uncomfortable look than you've shown in your entire career. Peterson looked surprised. Lisa, she's never been an executive. Leadership isn't about titles or experience, Maya replied. It's about character, integrity, and respect for others. Lisa has those qualities. They can't be taught, but they can be recognized and rewarded. She opened the office door and stepped into the hallway. Through the glass walls, she could see employees throughout the building going about their work, unaware that their company had just changed hands and their futures had just gotten brighter. 20 minutes later, Maya was sitting in her rental car in the parking garage, calling her father's old friend who ran the local community college back in Kansas. Hi, Mrs. Patterson, it's Maya Johnson. I wanted to let you know that the scholarship fund we discussed is moving forward. We'll be able to offer full scholarships to 50 rural students who want to study business. As she drove away from Sterling Industries, Maya thought about going home to Kansas, to the farmhouse where she'd grown up and the land that had taught her everything she needed to know about hard work, integrity, and treating people right. Some lessons, she reflected, were worth more than all the money in the world.